Geeks and geekettes, pop culture enthusiasts everywhere, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time once again for Ask Chuck Dixon. What is Ask Chuck Dixon? Who is it? Who is Chuck Dixon? Well, Chuck Dixon is me. I'm a comic book writer, and that's what I'm here to answer your questions about. Comic book writing, comic book creation, a little bit of comic book history every now and then, because I can't resist talking about my favorite medium. And if you like what you see here, you can help me out by going to Subscribestar. There'll be a link in comments under this video. You go to Subscribestar, look for Chuck Dixon, and throw a couple of bucks my way so I can keep doing this, because YouTube is kind of funny with their numbers. You know, I've got more viewers than ever, and I'm earning less than ever. So I got to justify my time, because these videos are fun, and I enjoy talking to you, and I love the questions and comments and the rest of it. But it takes time away from writing, which is my job. So, you know, you wouldn't want the bus driver to stop his bus and do a free video, would you? Leave you sitting there. Anyway, let's get on to our first question, because that's really what we're all here for. Comics Gatekeeper. With regards to what you said about Nightwing not getting his own book, was this bizarre separation of DC into smaller, autonomous kingdoms you described also the reason why we never got classic Justice League lineup of characters in the 70s and 80s? I always found it strange they went with mostly C-listers in that era when they could have had a book containing all their most popular heroes instead. I've never been able to figure that one out. You know, why the Justice League wasn't always the Magnificent Seven top iconic DC characters. Because history showed them that whenever it was, you know, Batman, Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Atom, and who did I miss? Green Lantern, Flash. Anyway, when it was those characters, Justice League was always a winner. It was always a big seller for them. And because everybody wanted to see all those characters interacting. Why not? They're their top-selling characters. But for some reason, creators always had this temptation to create their own teams. And I don't think that had a lot to do with the weirdness at DC, where you had all these fiefdoms and the editors didn't like sharing their characters, or editors would grab a hold of a character and just keep them forever, as the Teen Titans office did with Nightwing for years. So yeah, I don't quite understand why. You know, it wasn't a fiefdom question. I mean, I think DC knew if we're going to have a Justice League book, we want everybody in it. But for whatever reason, editorially driven or hubris from the writer, you know, we got characters like Gypsy. And even, you know, when Grant Morrison, you know, everybody talked about how brilliant Grant Morrison's pitch was for Justice League in the 90s. And my remark was, yeah, it's a great pitch, but at the heart of it, it just brings the main popular characters together again, which is what everybody always wanted. And of course, sales were enormous on it. And sales didn't begin to slide until they began replacing the iconic characters with, you know, as you said, C-listers or backbenchers. So I've never been able to understand that, other than the fact that perhaps for some writers, writing those classic characters all together in an ensemble was difficult for some reason. I don't quite understand why anybody would change that. So I realize the question is about Justice League, and I have Image's Nightwing, but live with it. So yeah, I don't think it was I think it was an individual editorial decision to dilute the Justice League with backbenchers. Okay, Aiden Belcher. I recently read your Iron Ghost miniseries. I really enjoyed it. The series was very well done. Well, thank you. Or should I say, Dankeschön. I was wondering about your process behind this. Mysteries are a tough thing to do, especially one that keeps people guessing until the end. What went into your construction of the Iron Ghost? How do you start a mystery like this And how do you keep it going in a satisfying direction that makes sense but maintains the suspense and intrigue? And how did you work to keep the mystery, the Iron Ghost's identity throughout the story? Well, thank you for the kind words, and thank you for realizing that a good, solid mystery is tough to write. My hat's off. My fedora's off to or my deerstalker is off to anybody who can write a mystery that makes sense, that's compelling and draws you into it and keeps you guessing. Now, those not familiar with the Iron Ghost is a sort of a shadow, masked vigilante type character who's running around killing Nazis in the final days of the Third Reich. I mean, he's going around Berlin, settling scores even as the Russians are closing in on the city. And I didn't want to just do, a Nazi shadow. I wanted something more to it. And I came up with the idea that we wouldn't know who the Iron Ghost was. We would introduce a cast of characters that could possibly be him, but not learn who he was, who the man behind the mask was until the very end of the story. So it's not really a whodunit. Well, I guess it is a whodunit. He's the who. And how anybody writes a good mystery is you work backwards. I knew who the Iron Ghost was going to turn out to be, so then I had to create diversions and red herrings and possible other suspects. It wasn't like a Scooby-Doo story where there's only one obvious suspect. So I had to do all those classic diversions. I was talking to somebody recently, and they said, well, that's how Agatha Christie worked. She worked backwards, except in one instance, she had a novel she wrote called, I think it's called The Death of David Aykroyd. No, it's not David. It's somebody Aykroyd. And they told me that she didn't know who the killer was. She wrote the entire novel and then decided to go back and choose which of the suspects in the story it would be, based on their charisma or interest to the readers. And then she did some light rewriting to make it all make sense. But that's what I had to do in Iron Ghost. I figured out who the Iron Ghost was. I'm not going to reveal it here in case some of you haven't read it, but it had to be somebody logical that could be, but the last person you would suspect. And of course, then it's a matter of making sure that that character is absent for good reason when the Iron Ghost appears. You got to make sure there's no plot holes. There's no instances in which that character couldn't possibly have had time to get to where the Iron Ghost was, or have time to change into the Iron Ghost, or whatever. So if you've never read it, I think you can find it on eBay. I think you can still find it on Amazon. Iron Ghost's imagery was created by me and Flint Henry, and the series is drawn by Sergio Cariello. And boy, did we do research! I brought over like boxes of books to Sergio and even some models. I remember I brought him over this enormous Stuka dive bomber model, which I think he still has. I got to pick that up someday. It was a lot of fun to work on. And thank you for appreciating the hard work that you have to put into a mystery to make it work. Now, you can write a lame mystery, as I already mentioned Scooby-Doo. We see lame mysteries all the time on TV where it's like, oh man, did they pull that one out of their butts? But I didn't want to be accused of that with the Iron Ghost, and I'm pleasantly, I'm very, very pleased that you were surprised by the conclusion. Lincoln Branch, how many of these episode scenes do you write at a whack? He's talking about arc tunes here. I don't know why, but I cut that part out of the question. He's talking about Arc Tunes, the digital comic service that I've been writing for recently. How many of these episode scenes do you write at a whack? Do you find it difficult to maintain the flow of a story doing these as compared to traditional comics? Writing comics is already far more truncated than long-form prose. I would think the start-stop nature of these vignettes would be a little creatively jarring. Arc Tunes is, as I said, it's a digital platform. You read it on your phone or any other device. You can read it on your big screen TV in your living room because the resolution is so clear. Generally, each one of these episodes of the various series that I write they basically amount to 2 pages of comics. like two 5-page or two 5-panel or two 6-panel pages. So I write a bunch of them. I get on a roll, and I might write, 8 of the episodes in a row. And it's easier to write. The storytelling pacing of it is a lot closer to manga than it is to American comics. We go into a lot more detail. I'm not going to say decompress because I don't do decompression, but we go into a lot more detail in the story. There's a lot more quiet moments that we can do, and it kind of lends itself to this venue. And this wasn't planned. This is just the way it happened. So yeah, I'll just get on a roll. And the thing is, I can do a bunch of these, and it's basically, I can do a few of these in a day, or maybe 2 or 3 days. I spent an entire week once on My Sister Suprema, and then I didn't have to write any more My Sister Suprema for months. And so you kind of have to keep a lot of it in your head, and then a lot of times I have to go back and make notes. I got to reread the previous scripts and previous episodes to make sure I have character names right and things like that. But for me, it's pretty quick getting back into the flow. I always got this question when I was on multiple titles back in the day, writing, 4 or 5 monthlies. How do you keep them all straight? I don't know, except that, they live in my head. This is what I think about all the time. These characters live and breathe in my mind. And so I'm able to quickly get back into the flow, and I can jump from one genre to another and just sort of get back into the mood, find that place where my mind was the last time I was writing it. And that's what's happening here with Arctoons, except the gaps are longer because, I can knock off a few months of scripts in a matter of days, which is different. And it's why I'm doing so many different ones. I mean, my output at Arctoons appears to be pretty amazing because it looks like I'm simultaneously working on like a dozen series, but it doesn't feel that way to me because of the nature of the beast. Hold on, what did I skip here? I skipped something. Yes! So you want to check out Arctoons. I'll put a link down in the comments below the video. But it's a free service. It's absolutely free. As I said, it's high res. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of series and gag cartoons and political cartoons and short strips and longer episodes. And there's quite a bit of reprint material by me from the past. So, go check it out. I really think you'll dig it. You'll find something there you like. I can absolutely promise you. Okay, Chuck, any thoughts or memories of doing the Green Hornet? Were you a fan before or still? How was it working at now? Back to the Archive logo. Okay, hey, boom, Green Hornet. Yeah, Now Comics hired me to do Green Hornet. My run on it was kind of cut short because without permission, Now made Kato a female. The licensor wasn't happy, but we were many, we were a few issues into the run before the licensor, the Rather Group, realized that we had gender swapped Kato. And so Now kind of cleaned house. They got rid of me. I don't know if they blamed me because it wasn't my idea. But that might have been what happened. That's probably the most likely explanation. It's like, oh, that writer, he's out of control. So they got rid of him, and they brought Ron Fortier onto the book, who should have been on the book from the beginning because he's a much bigger Green Hornet fan than I was. I had heard some of the radio shows. I love the conceit of the Green Hornet, the idea that the world thinks he's a criminal, but he's really working inside the underworld to bring them down. I dig that idea. I don't think they went far enough with it. The radio show, to me, was kind of tepid. I wanted more of a Shadow or Spider character, more ruthless, more mysterious character. And the same thing for the television show. I thought it was a shame it wasn't set in period, although that would have made it prohibitively expensive, probably. I watched every episode, and I loved it, but I mostly watched it for Bruce Lee. Because, he just seems so freaking cool. And the little bit of Kung Fu we would see each week, it was worth it for me to tune in. And I really dug it. I especially dug it when they did a Green Hornet Batman crossover. and Kato kicked Robin's butt. I thought that was neat. So, Dara O'Sullivan. I'm writing this from my hotel room in Vienna. Well, lucky you. International traveler, Dara O'Sullivan. I'm a huge James Bond fan, and I try to travel abroad once a year to visit the locations used in the movies. That's cool. I like that. A lot of the Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton's first Bond movie, was shot in this beautiful city. Have you ever visited a location abroad because it was used in a movie, Bond movie or otherwise? Is there any film location you would love to see sometime in the future? I have traveled abroad, but not in pursuit of movie locations. But, you know, if I were ever to go to a movie location, I'd like to go to a backlot western town. You know, one of the ones I might have seen. I understand a lot of them have fallen to ruin or literally burnt to the ground. But if there's any still existing, I just like to walk down the street, walk along the boardwalk. You know, tip back a chair in front of the sheriff's office. You know, so live out a little bit of my childhood cowboy fantasies. That would be cool. I've always said that, you know, if I became a multi-billionaire somehow, my only really expensive indulgence would be to build my own western town, you know, buy some, you know, remote location down here in Florida, and put a western town in. And there are parts of Central Florida that look very much like West Texas, so it would fit. So there's parts of Florida where you can't see a telephone line or electric tower on the horizon in any direction. So yeah. That's the only. Yeah, I can't think of a movie locale that I would like to see. Maybe I might want to visit Rourke's Drift, but the actual location, not the one used in the movie. But I can't feature traveling to South Africa anytime soon. Alyssa M. Hi, I've been listening to Ask Chuck Dixon for a while now. Thank you. And I'm generally a huge fan of your work at DC. But all the recent and disappointing news about Connor Hawke had me revisiting choice issues of the 90s run and Dragon's Blood miniseries. I was wondering how you would have continued Eddie Fire's story if given the chance. Your version of his character as a whole, especially his paternal relationship with Connor, is my absolute favorite part of that period of Green Arrow. And I've always wished he'd been given a chance to react to Ollie's return. I didn't realize until I got this that Eddie was not included in the Kevin Smith arc. I inherited Eddie from Mike Grell's run, and I liked the character, and I liked the fact that at first Ollie had someone, like a real world character to bounce off of, and then of course Eddie keeps his vow to Ollie to look after Connor as kind of a deadly guardian angel, and I just kept Mike Grell's thing going, and I probably would have continued doing that to have Connor and Eddie kind of father and son or uncle and nephew relationship. I can't think of any special direction I would have taken Eddie. But I would have definitely kept him in the series, and it's disappointing to me that he wasn't included in the resurrection of Ollie. I mean, he certainly should have been there. He should have been a part of that story in some way. That's the thing when you have an ensemble cast. It's important to give everyone in that cast some limelight and to remember that they exist. I wrote a novel once that has an ensemble cast. And it wasn't until I handed it over to my proofreader and editor, and she said, "What about this character?" I'd completely forgotten that this character was with these other characters in the previous book. And they were inside of a confined environment, so there was no place this character could have gone between books. And I had to do a big rewrite. And the thing is there, when you do a rewrite to reinsert an ensemble character you've forgotten, you can't make it seem as though you're just reinserting them. I had to do a pretty thorough rewrite to make sure that character organically fit into the story, had a real reason to be there, and had scenes of their own, that they got their own limelight. They just weren't in the background saying, "Yeah, let's go." Daniel Harden. if you are needing questions for a future Ask Chuck Dixon, I always need questions. That's what Ask Chuck Dixon's about, my friend. I have one you can use. Thank you. I had a back injury about 10 years ago that caused paralysis from the knees down. Being that I'm a huge Batman fan, it was inspirational that Bruce Wayne Batman was broken by Bane and overcame his injuries to come back and take up the mantle of Batman. Through a surgery and months of physical therapy, I was able to walk and eventually run again. Well, that is good news. Happy ending. After I had recovered, I went back and read the Nightfall series. I had not realized completely till I read it again. It was through the healing power of Chandra Kinsolving that Bruce Wayne was healed. Was this always the plan to have Bruce healed this way, or was this expedited due to the fans' dislike of Azrael Batman? If this was expedited, was there another plan on how Bruce would be healed to come back as Batman? Yeah, I mean, when this story was first proposed, I was like, well, how do you come back from an injury this bad? And I turned to a relative of ours who's a ICU nurse. And I said, if you ever got an injury, if someone came in, their back was broken, what's the first thing you have to do? And she told me that there's a drug that would have to be injected into the spine immediately to reduce swelling. Otherwise, paralysis would be permanent. If you could reduce the swelling, better chance for the person, the victim, the patient, to recover all of their abilities, to walk and as our questioner says, run. So that to me, and I wrote the issue. I wrote the issue following the back breaking, and so I dealt with that sort of ticking clock that Tim and Alfred have to get this chemical and get it to Bruce. But you correctly surmise that Dr. Kinsolving and the more holistic approach to healing Batman was brought in as a result of the fans' visceral dislike of Jean-Paul Vallée as Batman. And so we needed sort of a quick and dirty way to get Batman back, or get Bruce Wayne back on his feet, not showing, months and months of recovery time and physical therapy and things like that. And so it was pretty much left to Doug Mensch, who created the Chandra Kinsolving character. And it was pretty much left up to him. And if you read Nightfall, you can see that most of the Bruce Wayne recovering from his injury stories, if not all, are all written by Doug. And so Denny kind of assigned Doug, and I remember Doug, he assigned it to Doug, and I think we went to dinner or lunch or something like that. And when we met, Doug came back and he says, I figured out a name for the character. And he told her name will be Chandra Kinsolving. And he started to tell us all about her. And he had already done some reading on this kind of holistic therapy. And so, perfect guy to hand it off to, right? And, I think he did a great job in because we were in a fix. We had to bring Batman back as quickly as possible. And this was the fastest way. So you are right. That is the reasoning behind it. Matt Coleman. Did Marvel quash a Moon Knight omnibus that contained your run on Mark Spector Moon Knight? Actually, there's one coming out next year. So anyway, but I'll go on. The omnibus editions came out and they skipped right over your run and directly to 2006. It's an almost pointed omission and one that sucks. I read a quote-unquote article that gave grudging respect to that comic, but said it was, quote-unquote, incredibly racist, the General Bushman arc, and said of the trial of Mark Spector, my favorite arc in that series, quote, it truly could have been an all-time best epic for the character if not for Dixon's warped politics, failing the story in the end. He just could not help himself, unquote. What gives? Is this Marvel being the compost pile it is today or what? I want that omnibus. Well, you will get that omnibus. They're going to collect a Mark Spector Moon Knight omnibus, and it includes the first 30, 1 through 34, the complete run of the series. 24 of those issues are mine with Sal Velluto. And Yeah, I mean, they they objected to Bushman as a villain. I don't think I created Bushman. Were they angry that a black man was a bad guy in the story? I remember that back during Steranko's Nick Fury run, he had a black villain. Did anybody object then? I don't think so. Yeah, and the thing is, you got to remember that Mark Spector Moon Knight was being done. He was a mercenary. A lot of the mercenary action, the soldier of fortune, gun for hire kind of fighting was being done in Africa. So you're going to run into African good guys and African bad guys. And at the time, at the time of writing of this book, Idi Amin Dada was still in charge of Uganda. So kind of rip screaming from the headlines kind of story. And I don't understand. And I don't know what my warped politics were. I have to go back and reread Trial of Mark Spector, but I don't ever remember purposely inserting my personal politics. And I don't think I had any personal politics about mercenaries in Africa. I didn't have a dog in that fight. I don't know. And I certainly had Spector feeling remorse about things that he had to do as a mercenary. I mean, I don't know. I can't answer these things, and I'm not about to apologize. I'm not going to apologize even without rereading it, because apologies get you nowhere. These days, apologies are showing your throat to the enemy, and I don't really feel like apologizing anyway. It seems more like this guy inserted his own warped politics into the review of a comic book than I was inserting anything into the comic book that was untoward. Gray cloudy day. If so, I so want some new Alien Legion. And whatever happened to the concept for an Alien Legion movie? Hey, I'd love to write some more Alien Legion if Carl Potts would ever call. He knows I'm the go-to guy. I'm the guy that, I'll jump on at any time. I've never said no. I love this cast of characters. I love the concept. And why wasn't it ever made into a movie? Well, I got to tell you that Carl Potts revealed recently that over the years, and I can attest this is true, partially, I bear witness to this, over the years, as much as $6 million has been spent just on Alien Legion screenplays. And I know because I've read 4 or 5 of them, and some of them were by top screenwriters, and they're all good. Some were written to be low budget, some were mid budget, some were written to be big budget, some were written to be animated, some were written to be pilots for TV series. But Carl says that over the years, $6 million has been paid out. And I bet you Carl saw hardly any of that. $6 million was paid out to hotshot screenwriters. You wonder how a movie ever gets made. You figure $6 million in, just make the damn thing. You already got $6 million invested. They probably moved that $6 million over to Titanic or something. They put it on a bigger movie's budget because they do that. Hollywood accounting is strange, but why don't we have more Alien Legion? You got to find a publisher, blah blah blah. But if Carl came to me and said, "Hey, I want to do a crowdfunder, do an Alien Legion graphic novel," I'd be all over it, and I would bet it. I bet it would be an enormous success. So maybe I need to email him. Because I love these characters. I still remember all their names, which is unusual for me for an ensemble book. A lot of them I created. I got to, Carl gave me free hand on this series. Amazing for a creator to just say, I trust you, go for it. But I dug that series, and I'm glad you do too, and lots of other comic fans remember it fondly as well. Sip of tea time. Take a sip of tea if you got it. Okay, Brandon says, sorry, I'm laughing at the name Brandon. I'm not laughing at Brandon. I'm just laughing at the name Brandon. You know what I mean. As a concept. I was wondering what you think are the best Captain America stories in portraying how tough he is. Well, he's always been a badass. Captain America really is Marvel's Batman. He's their biggest badass. I know he's got the superhero serum and everything else, but he seems more like a real guy. And just indefatigable. Nothing's ever going to stop Cap from doing what's right. And I go back to a story that appeared, when I was a kid reading comics, they had a phony Captain America show up in a issue of Strange Tales, and he meets Johnny Storm, Human Torch, and then we find out he's a fake. He's a fraud. He's not the real Cap. And of course, this was Marvel testing the waters. And they bring Cap back, and I remember that cover of the Avengers. I freaked out at the drugstore. I'm like, whoa, it's Captain America. And I don't know how I knew about Captain America, but I did. Because it wasn't a fandom or anything. It wasn't any way to find out about comic book history. For some reason, I just knew who Captain America was. Maybe I saw him one time somewhere in an old comic, really old comic. Whatever. So, the very first story he appeared in, his first solo story, was obviously something Kirby came up with and did over a weekend. And it was in the very first appearance of Cap as a backup in Tales of Suspense. And the premise of it is that all the Avengers are going to go have dinner or go to a party or go home and sleep. And it's up to Cap to watch over the Avengers mansion. So for the first time, you don't have Thor or Iron Man looking over the Avengers mansion. It's Cap. And a bunch of thugs, I can't remember if they were Hydra or who they were, they think that this is their chance to get into the Avengers mansion and steal all kinds of tech. Just get in there and be bad guys. So it's a bunch of, badass, tough burglar characters as designed by Kirby are going to show up, and they're going to take down Cap because in their mind, Cap is the weakest link in the Avengers. This is basic premise for a story. They show up, Cap kicks their ass. And, he does all the acrobatics, all the cool stuff. Kirby obviously had a blast. He did like these 8-panel grids of Cap just, Chuck Norrising these guys. I mean, they don't stand a chance against Cap. And they find out that, this wasn't the best night to break into Avengers Mansion. It was the worst. So, that, to me, it was like really, other than the Avengers appearances, like the early Avengers appearances is a story that made the biggest impression on me. I reread that, I can't tell you how many times. I read the covers off that book. I was constantly going back and looking at that story because the simplicity of it, and just the ballsiness of just doing a story that basically was 2 acts. You set up and then Cap, hands their asses to them. Just great stuff. Just great stuff. Andrew Renz Salendu. I remember you once made a remark about Tim Drake. I think it was in Wizard Batman special that one day he'd just quit being a costume hero and would lead a normal life. I want to ask you, has this opinion changed over the years? I ask because a few Tim stories after you left DC showed him taking up the Batmantle. And all that doesn't ring true to me at least. Maybe you mean in the least. Plus, what, in your opinion, would Tim Drake be after he stopped being Robin? I think he'd be a tech guy, but these days, tech-related people seem to be a-holes. Sorry. But Tim is too decent a person to be that kind of thing. Thank you for reading. Just want to say your Robin run is still my utmost favorite long run in 35-plus years of reading comics. Nightwing and Bop ain't too shabby either. Well, thank you so much for the kind words. And yeah, well, I probably put it in your head that Tim Drake wouldn't be Robin forever. But the reason why I thought that was because Tim Drake, unlike Dick Grayson, and we're talking strictly the being in the role of Robin, Tim Drake was not a natural. And Dick Grayson was. He was a natural athlete. He's an acrobat. He had all these qualities that he brought to Robin that, basically made it easier for him to become Batman's sidekick. Tim Drake had none of these things except the determination to want to be Robin, much like Bruce Wayne's determination to want to become Batman. But all that said and done, I saw Tim Drake as more cautious, more, not delusional in any way. He wasn't grimly driven toward vengeance or, this sense of justice or anything else. And I kind of thought, well, this kid would grow up and just not want to do this anymore. He'd done enough tours of duty in Gotham, and he was going to have his own life. And that's the way I always figured it for him. And when you say, go into tech, and most tech people are a-holes, it's an unfair judgment, I believe. They may be weird, some of them, but I think that's a stereotype, the maladjusted tech person. Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates aside, but I've met a lot of real white hats in security, tech security, guys who basically are on the ramparts every day for us. I did a weekly strip for Microsoft a number of years ago, and it gave me access to a lot of their top tech security guys. One guy in particular was very helpful, and he would tell me stories that literally kept me awake at night. Because you hear about, the Pentagon was attacked yesterday by the, Chinese cyber whatever. Okay, that happens every single day. That happens thousands of times a day. But he told me stuff about the grid, about the internet, about just scary stuff about all the bad actors around the world who are constantly, persistently assailing our security systems, and the work that our military and our tech companies have to do to keep those people out, to keep them from basically screwing with us every single day. And you got to wonder, a lot of stuff that you see happening, how much of that is a result of cyber warfare? We'll never know. We'll probably never know of the defeats and victories and what the tide of war is in this very real struggle that's going on between countries, digitally, right under our noses, right through the devices that you are watching this on right now. You're being, you're being spied on, you're being surveilled, and it's, being surveilled by friendly people and unfriendly people. And friendly people who could become unfriendly, depending on what you post or tweet or, put up or write about in a blog. So it's kind of a scary time. It kind of makes you want to go, maybe I'll just step away from this entirely. But that's becoming more and more impossible as, just to walk around on the planet. You got to be connected. You got to be constantly connected to one device or another. Well, on a lighter note, if you have questions, suggestions, pictures of your dogs, pictures of your cats, maybe a favorite comic book cover, or comic book memory, maybe a picture of your local comic book shop with the smiling dealer behind the cash register, whatever, send it to brunobookstore@gmail.com. It's the most reliable way to reach me. Yes, you can ask questions right here on YouTube, just below the video. You can ask me questions on Facebook, but sometimes I miss them. I never miss a question that comes to brunobookstore@gmail.com. So that's where you want to go. And while I got you, there's a brand new Levon book. It's going to be out in just a few days. You can pre-order it right now. It's going to be out in just a few days. It is book 10. People tell me book 10 in the series is the magic number. Of course, I heard that about book 6. This is where the sales are going to go huge. It's going to explode now because you got 10 books. Who waits till there's 10 books in the series to start it? I don't know. But anyway, it's Levon's Prey. It's kind of the third book in a trilogy within the series where Levon is up against a pretty wicked child trafficking ring in the southeastern part of the United States. And he takes care of business in this one. He takes care of business. Don't worry about those child traffickers. Their lifespan is measured in minutes once Levon shows up. So if you want to check that out, you can go right over to Amazon. It's available in paperback. It's available on Kindle, and will be very, very soon available on audio. So check that out. And that's about it for me. I will see all of you down the road.